This is a reading from the Notebooks by Maria Valtorta, 1944, January 4th, and the reference is Daniel chapter 11, verse 27. Jesus says, Daniel, inspired by God, states the truth which is now excessively overlooked. The mystery of the future and the other, greater mystery of the hereafter may not be known in the form and breadth willed by God, except by those to whom God wants to make them known, directly, without intermediaries, without props, without devices, without helpers. For the Spirit, there are no limitations or obstacles or confines or insufficiencies or needs. He is powerful, free, and instantaneous. He brings light and intelligence with him. Even an uneducated or mentally retarded person, if assailed by the Spirit of God, becomes learned, not with your poor human science, but with the sublime science of God. I said, I thank you, O Father, for you have hidden these things from the learned and have revealed them to the humble. Footnote, Matthew chapter 11, verse 25 to 27, Luke chapter 10, verse 21 to 22. On saying Father, I was also saying Spirit, for the Father is one with the Spirit, and I am with them. And whoever blesses one blesses the three, and whoever is loved by one is in the arms of the three. For there are not three gods, but one God, alone, with a triniform nature, and a single unity. Great is the Father, great is the Son, and great is the Spirit. Powerful is the Father, powerful is the Son, and powerful is the Spirit. Holy is the Father, holy is the Son, and holy is the Spirit, to the same degree. The Father comes in his unity, generating us. The Son comes with his saving origin. The Spirit comes with his septiform, sanctifying flame. They come loving one another, and loving and make a humble person, the least of persons, into an eye penetrating into the mystery of God, a mouth speaking the words of God. Those kissed by God are not the ones among men who, filled with error, are hungry for magicians and diviners. They are not the ones who, with histrionic manifestations, try to emulate God in themselves and seduce the credulous without true faith. They are not the ones who turn their Satanism into gain. These are, and may they be increasingly, accursed. Those kissed by God are the ones who lead the chaste, mortified, and loving life of the servant of God, those who flee applause and hate to be known, those who, lost in the vortex of light that is God, with their hearts nourished with faith and the spirit of charity, remain like mystical mouths upon myself, breathing in truth and knowledge from me, not coercers, not overbearing, not merchants of mystery. They receive what I give in simplicity, in love, into honesty. Not profaners. They would never allow themselves in any way to stir up the atmosphere capable of creating that climate, which not I, who do not need climates and an atmosphere, I repeat to you, but their Satanism needs to receive the outflow of the evil one. Shammers of God and his saints, worse than shammers, parodists of God and his saints, regarding whom they put on an act which is sacrilege, children, subjects, and ministers of Satan, his baits. Not a word of truth is in their mouths, not a light in their hearts. Deceit carries them, and whoever believes in them, away into the depths of the abyss sought for by them. Nor can it be otherwise, for even the crafty one cannot know the thought of God to the root, and he does not say even what he knows, since he is always the serpent, who sings a lying song to bring ruin wherever his jealousy sees, that there may still be a dwelling for the Lord. How can you believe in those phantoms, smoke from Satan's mouth, who appear to you to simulate what only God can send you for your spiritual guidance? And don't you realize that, if it is true that God can accept your desire to feel him to be a loving Father, more than most men so desire, it is also true that no one, I repeat no one, not even a saint, can impose himself and say to him, Come, I command you. I come when, where, and as I will, in the hour and the environment I will. I speak to you as I will, and between the truthful simplicity which is my sign, and the simple humility which is the sign of my servants, on the one hand, and the deceitful prancing and the avid pride of the opposing, false possessors of truth, on the other, there is an even greater difference than the one existing between the sun and the starless night, and a vaster abyss than the one existing between one shore and another of the ocean, whose depths in certain areas cannot be measured by you. On this side are God and his truth. On that side are Satan and his error. On this side my hand is outstretched to bless the humble flowers who receive my light, blessing me and judging themselves to be unworthy of it. On that side my hand is outstretched to curse, because they are poisonous flowers of a putrid pool, clutched by serpents with an eternally fatal venom. As for you, I say, this is my word. Receive it for your peace. The 3 crosses are the sign of the 3 victims in this city. One is already bearing the ripe fruit which should be detached from the holy tree in order to be stored in the city of God. Peace has come for her, and, like Christ after his martyrdom, she is lowered from the cross to be a seed for blessed life. Greet your sister soul. Footnote. In this connection we have been provided with the following text, considered to have been written by Father Migliorini. Viareggio, January the 5th, 1944. Since I have been attending Antonia, I have mentioned her to the spokesman, Maria Voltorta. He did not cease to pray, all the more because, as both were victims offered to God to obtain mercy from the Lord for many, and especially for this Italy of ours, they felt themselves to be sister souls without knowing one another. Since January the 3rd, the spokesman had been seeing, as if at a distance, a Calvary where 3 crosses rose up. 2 were raised up and firmly rooted, but the one in the middle appeared to be markedly tilting, as if about to fall. The vision remained an enigma until yesterday. The Saviour let it be known that the cross in the middle was Antonia, who had now fallen. This refers to Antonia d'Albo, of whom there is a note in the entry for January 14th. The other 2 crosses belong to 2 other victims. One is yours. It is still upraised towards heaven because your mission is still to last for a time. The mountain is desolate, and its 3-fold crown is sad. But see how close it is to heaven, and how much sky there is around it, and how far away the world is. You already between the altar and heaven. O my dear victims, and the angels are around you to gather in your spirits when you consummate the final pain. The vision will come closer and closer to you, for I am burning to see you live through my passion. But do not fear. Like a tenderly bending branch, so the cross will set you down after the trial, as it set down your sister, and heaven will open for you. Go in peace. January 5th. Jesus says, what you have seen, footnote, the explanation comes at the end, is the blessed falling asleep of my mother. You are so exhausted and tortured that my love feels the need to pour the sweetness of visions upon you. And, for you that must die, what could be more comforting than this one? The death of victims is not always so placid as Mary's passing on. There are some among you that remain on the cross until their last breath. But even if it were for the duration of their last breath, ecstasy accompanies you, beyond pain, to the peace of heaven. Pain is already exhausted when your evening comes, and from heavens peace flows over you, not waiting for you, but running to meet you, to cover you with its balm after so much martyrdom. Do not fear, you that offer yourselves. I, expiator for the whole world, was the only one who knew no comfort in my death. And because I experienced that bitterness, I have mercy and open the gates of heaven to my little Christs, to assail them with light and rejoicing in their final moments. No, you that have chosen the cross do not die. You leave pain to enter into joy. And since the joy of the child of God is to possess God, this joy is given you in advance of death, in a knowledge of God, whom your eyes see, before closing upon the horror of the earth. Have faith in me. The death of my disciples is the envy of the angels. You have already been told by my mother. Footnote. Perhaps on December 18th, 1943. See the Notebooks, 1943. You have already been told by my mother that at the end of her earthly days, love increased in her like an overflowing flood and a fire reaching its peak. Mary's life had always been life in the Lord. The vicissitudes and occupations of existence were not an obstacle to her union with God. For her, to live had been to pray. To pray had been to contemplate. Her hours of prayer were abysses of adoration, of charity, pearls of inestimable beauty in the great treasury of her days. What for others is consumption in ardor was for her an increase in life, and for her to rest was not to sleep, but to recollect herself in God, in the silence of the nights, and to love him with her spirit enraptured, while the flesh, abandoned by the soul, lay awaiting the return of the Spirit, made joyful and strengthened by the embrace of her God. Dew is nourishment for the flowers. The dew of love was nourishment for Mary. She fed on it as if upon divine manna. When her final sunset came, footnote. From this point on, the dictation was also copied, almost literally, with a few additions, into the section entitled Considerations and Explanations Regarding the Assumption and Falling Asleep of Mary Most Holy, contained in the narratives forming the glorification cycle. When her final sunset came, like a weary lily bending under the stars at night, and closing her eyes of whiteness, Mary lay back on her couch, and closed her eyes upon the world, to recollect herself in a final earthly contemplation of her God. Bending over her rest, Mary's angel anxiously waited for the impetus of ecstasy to separate that spirit from the earth forever, while from the heavens there descended the gentle command of God, "Come, O all-beautiful one," and that angelical light shone more brightly in her holy rejoicing, calling from heaven other cohorts of light to the Hosanna for the victorious woman who was ascending to her triumph. Bending over her rest, the angel John also watched over the mother, who was leaving him alone, and when he saw that she was still, he kept on watching so that the inviolate one of God, sleeping so placidly and beautifully, would remain unprofaned by irreverent gazes, even after death. John, to whom virginity had given the gift of feeling Mary's desires, as love had given him the capacity to understand me like no one else, ever did not permit any violation of the Blessed One, whose death had been like the change in color of a flower towards an even purer whiteness, like that of a lily opening on an April dawn, on her dawn in heaven. Your legend states that in Mary's tomb, reopened for Thomas, there were only flowers. Mary's tomb did not swallow up her body. Mary's body was not there. Mary did not die. She was joined with her body to the spirit which had preceded her, reversing the usual laws whereby ecstasy ends when the spirit returns to the body. It was Mary's body that returned to the spirit after a pause on the deathbed. Everything is possible for God. I came out of the tomb with no help other than my power. Mary came to me without experiencing the tomb, without its horror of putrescence. It is one of the brightest miracles of God. You have no relics of the body and tomb of Mary, because Mary had no tomb. Her body was taken up into heaven. She awaits you there, praying to her Son for you. I told you that since last night I have been seeing the Virgin sleep, entirely white, composed, serene, her hands joined over her chest, the right leg slightly bent at the knee. I saw her lie back on that sort of bed and close her eyes like someone falling asleep in great peace. It is impossible to express the grace of the act and appearance. It is something both restful and moving.